talk about the workforce and the capabilities, sustaining that in the environment they have to operate is the challenge they really have to face. I mean, we're where we are not by choice. It's just where we end up being. And the job that Henry Reed had was challenge the people and provide resources. These people got the same job. You just don't do it the same way. I mean, if there's only one telephone, no telecoms, no tweets, and no email, and the U.S. mail is the way you communicate with headquarters, life is one way. But when you communicate at the speed of light, it becomes a lot more difficult to maintain any autonomy at all, really, in the environment these people work. But I happen to be on the cusp when that transition seemed to be happening. And it's a challenge, and these folks, in my opinion, have done an excellent job of doing that. They have made the adjustments at the center that makes Langley very viable in today's environment.
So the difficulty I've had is when we try to act like things are separate, right? When we try to say we separate our missions from our capabilities, and don't treat them all as one. And so what I mean by that is, we'll be like, well, we're going to fund the missions, but we're not going to fund our capabilities, and act like they're separate things. And that's what I've been struggling to break down. I tried to do it here at NASA Langley, and I've certainly been doing it at headquarters, where we understand that they're one and the same. Our capabilities enable our missions, and we have to think of that as a whole, and we have to make sure that we're enabling and creating those capabilities that will enable those missions of the future, and think about them all together. And so I've worked to make sure that our missions are very engaged in deciding what do we need NASA to be in the future, what capabilities do we need, and not just, and I don't know why the stovepipes happen, but but not just putting blinders on and saying we're going this way, and then the rest of NASA is going, what's happening there, right? So we don't have the things we need for the future. So that's been something I've worked to try to break down and not treat those as two separate things. And I know Steve has been really helping and working as part of that too.
It's made me very popular with the senators.
Okay, let's take another question from the audience. How do you think Langley's culture differs from that of other centers or from headquarters? And over the years, how have interactions with the other centers changed?
Well, so what I see from, because I've been in all the different cultures I worked 15 years at Kennedy Space Center, 4 years at Johnson Space Center, 11 years at Langley, and now, I don't know, 3 years or so at headquarters. So culture and how is Langley different? What I see is, kind of a depth of expertise at NASA Langley, and it's interesting to watch, and you could see it come together on some of those missions like Ares 1X and Paddleboard, where, say the project manager, the Johnson team would kind of be like, okay, we got enough, now let's move, and they're good with kind of around 80% or so, and Langley might need to get more up to more knowledge on exactly the depth of that. And so I've just seen from a research culture kind of versus a flight, and that's not all, right? Because we have within NASA Langley, we have kind of research and flight culture. So just a bit of a difference there with kind of that, but other than that, so it's just a bit different from a more operational culture and a more research-based culture.
Yeah, I think that's fundamentally it. I think the research centers are trying to really look at what will make a difference moving forward. That is really the job, and I think that's really the technical excellence, the depth of technical capability, and applying that to really enable some new things, brand new things, new capabilities by integrating technologies I think is really, pretty prevalent across the research centers. I think as a research center, Langley is somewhat unique in that we have more of a systems view of things. I think in the directorates, particularly the ones that Jerry led and the one that Dell led, there's a strong systems analysis and systems capability too that drives the technology, and then we feed that back into the system and see how it makes a difference. So that's maybe an area where Langley's somewhat unique, particularly on the vehicle side. I think the relationships between the centers, that's an interesting one. I've been out of the game for a little while, so maybe Dave can comment on this.
Sure.
But I believe, particularly since Columbia, that the center leaders have really put in time and effort to collaborate more effectively across centers. It hasn't all been, a honeymoon, I'll say, all the time, but I give credit to center leadership, office of director, and on down, in really figuring out ways to collaborate, to most effectively use the capabilities across the centers in a way to most effectively accomplish the mission for the agency. So I think that's been a journey we've been on since probably at least I can remember since the mid-90s, and I think the current leadership is doing a really good job.
Yeah, just real quickly, a couple comments related to that. First of all, I think actually when you look at culture, we have a lot more in common in culture across the agency maybe than people want to give credit for. I think we all have a culture of passion around what NASA does, and sometimes we approach problems differently and think about them differently, but that's good. It gets back to that diversity of thought and approach on how you're going to solve a problem. So sometimes that didn't get talked about. We talk about our cultural differences across centers, but actually I think we have a lot of cultural similarities in our passion for the agency. So that's one comment. And I think it has evolved over the years that not so much culture, but competition between centers. I think we have, I've seen a big shift over the last 10 years. I'm trying to think of the time, but in the recent past where, hey, we all bring something valuable to the table to get the mission done, and let's concentrate on those things we're good at. I've spent a lot of time over the last 2 years talking about Langley's value proposition and what we bring to the thing. It's not everything the agency does. We have things we're very good at, and other centers have things they're very good at, and we ought to team together to get the mission done. As far as teaming, I see David McBride, my counterpart from Armstrong sitting over there. Ricky Shine, I know, is here from Glenn. Eugene, and I talk all the time. Actually, Eugene, David, myself, and Janet Gandhi, Glenn, we actually talk a lot. Not conspiring against the airports, but we do have some things in common. And I talked to Ellen, and I talked to Todd May. So I think that's actually has changed over the last 10 years of working together and saying, hey, we all bring something to the table, so let's build on that.
And I wanted to add in too, I know because Robert Lightfoot he was previously the center director of Marshall, and then me being at Langley, we work really hard to make sure the missions and the centers are all together and really build that team, and to break down those barriers and to make sure it's clear roles and responsibilities across the centers, so we don't have that unhealthy competition that was occurring across centers that was kind of hitting and created those interdependencies across all those centers. That's something we focused on extensively, since we've both been up there.
What's the one thing that you did as center director that in hindsight you would have done differently? And what is the one thing that you were not able to accomplish during your tenure that you wish you would have been able to?
Well, let's see, so I can say that one thing, so I was, when I came into NASA Langley, as I mentioned, I was assigned the reorganization of the center. And that I wouldn't, because I spent quite a bit of time and got a lot of input and had a lot of help from folks, and developing that. But I think we did this kind of new idea in the competition of the jobs once we were done with the reorg. And that was even more popular than the reorg. And so I can tell you there was tremendous stress around that occurred. Now maybe some good things in the end, maybe I can rationalize, but in the end, some really good things that came out because I think people were then placed in different positions. And I saw much more integration across, and people could visualize. They didn't identify themselves with their job. They identified themselves with the team to accomplish things. So I saw some healthiness come out of that, but I can tell you there was a lot of stress, and I'm associated with that competition on those jobs, and I wonder if there was a better way to do that, looking back. So.
If I can make a comment on Langley organization. I remember two things that I heard clearly from Langley employees. The first was, we don't like our organization. And when we tried to do something about it, they would say, we like this new one less. And I have also sometimes said, you'd think after 100 years, if there was a right way to do it, we might have stumbled onto it.
Yes, this is somewhat of a comment, but yeah, my one regret is saying yes to Robert when he called me to come up to headquarters. The unfinished business is interesting. I mean, I think, in any job, it takes, I was deputy for a while, for 9 years, so I was in the office of the director for over 10 years. But it's different when you're the person running the show, right? Different when you're you're the person who's making decisions, and you can't go, well, we'll just have to run that by Lisa and get her to make that decision. So, I think there are, we're on a really good trajectory in aeronautics, particularly with Aviation New Horizons. And I give Jay Lunchin and ARMD a lot of credit for that, but I also give Langley a lot of credit for that, because we really pushed from our end, and sometimes not being very popular with headquarters in the pushing. And I think so. I think that's seeing that through. Or we're starting to see that through. And I wish I've been around to see that through. Just to be honest with you, I'm very proud of the work we do in earth science and atmospheric science. I am just, I spend most of my technical career doing remote sensing instrument development and mission systems engineering for the science missions. And I think we're starting to get on really solid footing there with the next generation of instruments. And I wish I would have been around to see that do more. Is the one area in the agency that I am really worried about now. To be honest with you, I'm just going to be honest. It's I'm really worried about it. My personal opinion, the perfect example of what we could do here, right, in this area is stratospheric ozone depletion, right? We developed science, did science research, remote sensing instruments, used that data to inform policy, led to Montreal Protocol and amendments, led to a recovery of stratospheric ozone, right? Which is a filter for UV rays, right? And we used our remote sensing science to validate the effectiveness of that policy, right? Well, we should be kind of doing that now, with what's going on with the change in the earth now. And so I really worry